Hey, Noah, we are back
Aaron.
for another Tile Tech Talk. And I'm
Yes,
very concerned because my lighting's off, but I'll get over it.
you're okay.
So how are you? We're recording this on the last day
The
of
last day of the
2020.
2020. Goodbye, 2020.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I thought it would be helpful for the folks who watch our Tile Tech Talks to get your perspective on, at the end of this unusual year, where we're at in terms of technical specifications and the role of tile in cleaner environments and all that kind of stuff. Just what are you seeing as a true leader in our industry in this regard?
Oh goodness. Well, we have done a lot. There has been a lot that's been accomplished this year, I guess, from a standards, standpoint, and obviously there's still a lot of things to tackle as we go into 2021. Of things that may start to come our way. From a standards development standpoint, I would say getting the exterior installation standard for panels was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
That was a couple of year process. And then we're still working on handbook details for gauge porcelain tile panels. So that's been a pretty good undertaking, and something that we'll see come to fruition in 2021. In a book published with both the interior, probably, and the exterior installation standard along with the product standard. So that's been really good. And then I would say from a sustainability standpoint, there seems to be a lot of things going on because of COVID that I won't say that we have a strong handle on yet, but that we're anticipating, something we need to pay attention to in 2021. Are there going to be new standards for cleaning surfaces, or for, what kind of surfaces are going to be allowed based on what properties they have? So, there's lots of pilot credits going on, and, and LEED standards, and we've seen some things in well and those. So we're paying attention, to those things, and, they're moving targets right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, it'll be something that we're going to focus some effort on in 2021 to at least understand, what is the new world that's going to be created by the fact that we've lived in this thing for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And people are going to be concerned about different things and asking different questions. And, we'll try to stay out in front of that.
Absolutely. It's interesting when this all started and we were creating content and we were responding to immediate needs. I, as somebody who helps create all this content, was trying to be aware that eventually we would get past COVID. So we didn't want everything to be on this topic. And yet here we are at the end of the year going into the next, and it's still so relevant. So it absolutely has to be consistently, openly addressed. And it is an evolutionary process. We don't know.
It is. I think it's going to change. It will result in a change in building design. I think lots of people are talking about that, how our spaces are going to be different, and how, the things that we care about in our spaces are going to be different. And I think it'll change some questions that people are going to be asking that we're going to need to have answers to. So, none of us are going to forget it quickly. And it should in some ways change, how we perceive and go forward.
Right. I saw an interesting headline. I've only read the headline, not the full article, but it really intrigued me, and I think it's so relevant, and I will be revisiting it, is that even like office spaces we sometimes think that we've always had offices. No, it's a human phenomenon. It's an invention that answered a need in our marketplace. And so if it's an invention, that means it can change to respond to
Right.
how the marketplace evolves. And I think we're just in that process of figuring things out.
Yeah, I think so too. I think people are trying to figure out what people are going to want, and what's going to make people feel comfortable, as well as be functional in somewhat of a new, environment. So, we'll see where it changes. So.
Right. And as you look at the coming year and your priorities, do you have anything that's top of mind that you're focused on?
I mean, I guess, the biggest question is when are we going to be able to travel again? We want to get back to in-person training. We've got an investment with the National Tile Contractors Association in sponsorship of gauge porcelain tile contractor installation training, which is important because that market is still growing. And even 5, 6, 7 years after we've been training quite a few people, there are still people, interested, especially on the residential side, because I think in the beginning we focused more on the commercial side. So I think now on the residential side, there's contractors wanting to get into that. So for sure, when can we get back to, even in small groups, congregating to, and, I think the plan so far is to not be unrealistic with that, to know that that's not going to happen in the first quarter, and kind of plan and cross fingers for the second quarter and deal with it, week by week, month by month. So,
yes.
So we're going to see how that is. That's for sure a priority for us next year, is to get back to doing that.
Right.
And then, there's just I think it's gonna be super interesting when, after the first quarter hits, how vaccinations are going, and that kind of thing. So, I mean, right now we're looking at, surfaces in June and coverings in July and total solutions in Jacksonville in October, plus a couple of annual meetings in different places. So, if it comes back, does it really come back? So, I mean, because I can see by June, the want, for me and for obviously for everybody else, to get back to doing it exactly the way we were doing it before. And is that realistic? So,
right.
But I think it's like anything else, you have to plan for it. And then you pivot if it's not the way it's going to be. So it could end up being a pretty busy second half of the year, just from, getting caught up on those things. So.
Oh, I know. I'm kind of already bracing for that. It's challenging going to all our shows, even when they're spread out a little bit, but consolidating it on the calendar will be tough. But I think a great point that you've made is that in-person training, that is, in this industry, that hands-on experience is essential.
Yeah. I mean, I think if we knew we were going to have to live with this for another year or two, we would figure out a way to develop some digital content. But we all know, my personal feeling is there's only so much of a replacement that is. If we had to do it, we wouldn't get it done, because that's the way it had to be. But, really being there is ultimately, for all kinds of reasons, still the best way to do it. And we want to get back to doing that.
Oh, yes. I mean, so hands-on, for goodness sakes. And every person has a unique situation as they're learning something like that. I can't even imagine trying to make that an efficient process digitally, but we'll do what we got to do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
I don't even know that you would have anything other than to smile and nod when I say it, but I think it's really interesting. I'm observing out in the marketplace, residentially, tile being more relevant for outdoor spaces. And like right now, we're focused on pool tile, because families are diverting their vacation budgets where they would have gone to Disney World. Well, now let's put in a pool in the backyard. So I just think it's interesting how the world is responsive to situations like this, and how that trickles down into what happens in the world of tile, and how we sell tile and what we provide. So I don't know, while other kinds of projects are being halted or not started yet, at least we have some interesting pivots happening.
Yeah, and I guess in my world, that we have had more questions specifically because of that. We've had questions about, what makes a good exterior tile, or what are the rules and those kind of things. And it is a difficult area for me to talk about, because we don't have standards for coefficient of friction is really the main conversation, right? Because we make porcelain tile. So, being outside, freeze thaw, is the one concern to make sure. But being porcelain, we have no concerns with being outside from a stability or a wear standpoint. So we're really just talking about appropriate, slip resistance or traction or coefficient of friction.
Right.
And there aren't really any rules in the United States for that. So we have standards for measuring the dynamic coefficient of friction. But the only standard we have now is for interior level spaces. and there isn't a lot of guidance because of all of the extra things that come in to try and understand what's the appropriate thing for an outdoor surface where, it's exposed to the elements and those kind of things. So we don't have as much, we only have this kind of one number of 0 greater than or equal to 0.42 for interior level spaces. And so traditionally, there's no guidance to tell us what's the right thing. So, over our history as a company, and I think most in the tile world, we've created exterior products by creating structure in the product, simulating natural stone in the surfaces that give, grip and undulation and texture that can provide some slip resistance. And now there are technologies evolving in finishes that can be created that aren't relying on the structure as much, but more in just how the surface grips in a wet environment. So it may allow us to kind of go into new areas of exterior use. But it's tricky from my standpoint, because there's no standard that says, well, if you do this and this and this, then that makes it okay for exteriors. So, and there's all kinds of coefficient friction standards around the world. We rely on this one, A326.3 is the most current version. And we use that as our test method, and we use the 0.42 as kind of a benchmark. But when we go outside, we know we need more than that, but how much more? So we draw on some standards from around the world internally, that we don't use completely, but they may be background information for us. Like we may use the German ramp, for example, and some people may have heard of R9, R10, R11, R12, where somebody actually walks on the tiles and inclines the surface until, you feel like you lose grip, that kind of thing. So internally, we use some information like that in order to try and design the best tile for the market, or, to make something as useful. But it's a difficult thing to try and find the balance between good grip, easy cleanability, everything that you're trying to do to make a good tile. So in the absence of clear and cut standards, it's something that we keep having a conversation about, and how do we make the best tile possible for the customer.
Right.
So and I think that's pools and the exterior transition area. So
sure. It's just interesting, and I certainly didn't mean to put you on the spot there with that.
No,
that topic. It's just it has come up so much more in the course of this year, as priorities are diverted and projects morph to do this kind of thing, and that's very much an outcome. I mean, not that pools weren't popular before, but seeing that become more of a focus in how we're selling and what people are choosing to do around their homes, that kind of thing.
Yeah. In the background, it's a discussion that's been going on for a while. Some of the other manufacturers have some charts that give some areas, and some recommendations. So we kind of look all that. It's just hard for me in my department, because I'm used to black and white. Here's the standard. Here's what we have to meet. And when there's an absence of standards, then it's a draw on all the knowledge you have in order to, try and make the right decisions and that kind of thing. So it's been an interesting conversation, to have. So luckily, we sit at a place where we understand, a lot of the global standards, and because of our work on the ISO committees and the ANSI committees, we kind of know what's going on out there, and it definitely is a conversation in the industry that's going on, and a conversation internally that we're having, with the launch of Portugal, and then, with working on new things, that we want to make sure that we are providing the best products, to the market, for those areas that are, going to be the ones that people are looking at and changing in their space.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. And I know the calendar next year, and what products will be rolling out. We're just, the new year is here, but we've been thinking about it for several months preparing. So
I think it'll take some more educational process, because that's really what it is. People are going to ask questions, and when there's not an answer, that's like, well, here's the answer. Because the standard says this, then it's got to be this conversation about, well, what are you trying to accomplish? And, what's the right surface for you? Because I don't think the pool that you and I would build here at the house and the requirements that we have for it isn't the same requirement for the pool at the YMCA, isn't the same requirement for the colonnade of a shopping mall and an outdoor space. These things don't all have the same simple, if it's this, it's okay.
Mhm.
So we need to make sure that we can educate our clients appropriately to make the right choices.
And this just proves how valuable what you provide in the mix
I hope
is.
so. You know,
Yeah. This
we
is
hope so.
not a simple conversation. Yeah, there are
Not a
so
simple
many
conversation.
aspects to consider. So, wow. Well, cool. Well, thank you for just
Yeah, no problem.
sharing a few minutes. I know it truly is, as we're recording this, it's New Year's Eve. So
I
you might
know.
want to
I'm so glad.
check out and enjoy your day and what's left of this crazy year.
Yeah, we still got a couple hours worth of stuff to do before we call it, but
I
I
know.
think
Me too.
we're all ready to call it a year.
Yes, for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
Well, we look forward to the next Tile Tech Talk that we'll
Yes, for
record on the
sure.
flip side.
Okay, sounds good. In
So
2021.
grateful. Yes. So much
Yes,
appreciate you taking time to do this. It's really helpful for folks.
absolutely. We appreciate doing it.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.